In this video, we're talking about how SteamOS is almost ready for prime time. And after that, I want to talk about Nintendo's new way to share digital games and why I think that could be good for the future. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about the Steam Deck. And yeah, it's a two-topic video because there is a lot to talk about. So I talked about a few videos ago how the Fox and ETA Prime did videos on putting SteamOS 3.8 on ROG Allies. And at first I thought Valve gave them the actual software early so that they could test it out, but then did a little research and I figured out you could just do it yourself if you grab the repair image from Valve and go through a lot of steps to actually get it installed. I'm not going through the entire tutorial in this video. There's a great video from Deck Wizard that goes through it literally step by step, and even following that to a T, I had a nightmare of a time getting this up and running on my ROG Ally X, and I'll tell you in a sec why it wasn't even worth it at the end of the day, but it's a pretty simple process. It just doesn't work right a lot of the time, so you have to redo steps over and over again. The high level way to do this: download the repair image, apply it to a USB stick, put the USB stick in your ROG Ally, re-image the SSD in your ROG Ally, then you have to reinstall SteamOS, and then you have to download Decky Loader to get the plugin that allows you to adjust the TDP. You have to get another Decky Loader plugin to make sure the controls work, and you have to get one to activate the RGB on the thumbstick. So all of those are pretty essential, except maybe the RGB on the thumbsticks. But I continually ran into issues on one step, which was after I re-imaged my deck. So SteamOS was installed on there. When the ROG Ally would restart, it would get stuck on the ROG Ally screen. So every time that happens, you have to reinstall SteamOS with that USB stick. It took like 16 tries. I don't know what I did wrong the other 15, but eventually it got through. It upgraded SteamOS. It gave it a newest update and everything like that. I had to switch it to developer mode and get the latest beta, but now it's booting into SteamOS. So after all that work, I figured I'd install some games that don't really run well on the Steam Deck, like, I don't know, Helldivers 2 or Death Stranding Director's Cut, see how they run on SteamOS on the ROG Ally X. And then I realized that even with that extra step I took to get the controller's buttons working, half of them don't work. They aren't recognized by SteamOS. And then looking into it a little bit further, there has to be a kernel update to allow it. So I don't know. I tried installing Handheld Daemon and it doesn't allow. I tried installing Handheld Daemon, which is made for Bazite, to allow these controls to work on like the Legion Go and the ROG Ally. Weirdly enough, the installer blocks you from installing it on SteamOS. It's like taking that control out of your hands. I'm assuming it's because it overrides the Steam input for the Steam controller on the Steam Deck. I don't know. It doesn't work. So I could use this thing with a DualSense or an Xbox controller and that would be fine. It's just not really something I'm interested in because I'm not going to replace my Steam Deck with this device at the end of the day. But if you've been wanting to try it, it works. It's just going to take you the better part of an entire day. Like, I thought this was going to be a 30-minute process. I started at 10 a.m. It's like 4 o'clock now, and I just got everything up and running. Oh, and it doesn't go to sleep 80% of the time, so that's cool. But there are some positives to take away from this about the future of SteamOS. First of all, it looks really damn good on a high-resolution screen. I know I've plugged my Steam Deck into a dock before, but if I use a 4K monitor, it kind of wigs out and doesn't work well, so I always downsampled it to 1080p. I've never really seen it on a good high pixel density display like this, and it scales perfectly, so that was cool. All the buttons seem to be in the right place as well, and it has the original Steam Deck boot up menu, which I haven't seen in a long time since I put the free one that came with my limited edition deck on. I think it's pretty cool that it all works pretty functionally. It's just the controls that aren't working right. Also, with the Decky Loader plugin that you use to control TDP, you can set the minimum and the maximum. I set it to 30, and I am curious. I might try out a couple games later, but that is cool. I hope that feature is baked into SteamOS for these devices when it releases, probably around May, I would guess. For the Legion Go S, they'll probably put the whole thing out a little bit before that, but this just gets me excited about potentially installing it on a Windows PC, like making a partition, installing it, and then having a dual boot setup where I can go into Windows for games like Call of Duty or any other game that doesn't allow you to use anti-cheat, and then I can hop into SteamOS for any of my single player stuff and get my awesome console set up on my gaming laptop. Like, you guys know, if you've been watching for a while, that's the future I want. And I'm honestly impressed that even though I had to jump through like 50 million hurdles to make this happen in the first place, that most of you probably won't have to jump through because I probably did something wrong, it still worked right at the end of the day. And when I restart it, it actually boots back into SteamOS, which puts me ahead of a lot of the other people I saw in Deck Wizard's comments saying that every time their device restarts, it makes them reinstall SteamOS. So if you have an ROG Ally, I would stick to Windows for now, unless you want to partition your drive and install Bazite. I am tempted to do that now that I've seen how well a SteamOS style operating system works on the ROG Ally. But I was scanning through the ROG Ally Reddit to see if other people have done this, and a lot of the comments were pointing out a big reason why people buy the ROG Ally over the Steam Deck outside of the performance gain is that they want to take advantage of Game Pass. And if you want to take advantage of Game Pass, you probably should just buy an ROG Ally and keep it on Windows, because they're updating Windows later this year to have a SteamOS kind of ripoff overlay that's going to be controllable with a controller. And they just updated Windows to allow you to control the keyboard with a controller. So that's pretty cool as well. I mean, you just got to assess what you actually want to do, because for $800, I do not think the ROG Ally X is worth buying over a Steam Deck for minor performance gains in most games. And then there's a few outliers that will get major performance gains, but like, you just get such a better ironclad experience on the Steam Deck across the board. Like, it reminded me why I love the Steam Deck going through this entire process, because I've never had to do it. Like, back when the thing came out, I was with it a lot for this channel. I was adding things like Decky Loader. I was trying to install BattleNet with the console and everything. A couple times back then, like 3 years ago, I had to reinstall SteamOS, but now I never have to. It updates fine. It downloads games fine. The only big issue I have with the Steam Deck is when you're patching a game that gets a lot of big patches like Diablo 4, for example, it takes forever, whether you're on the SSD or the SD card, to actually patch the game. But compared to what I had to go through on the ROG Ally, like, that's nothing. Like, the whole thing I love talking about is, at the end of the day, I just like to sit down and play some games. That's what SteamOS provides on the Steam Deck, and it's close, but not quite there on the ROG Ally and Ally X. But man, one really cool possibility that I just can't talk my way out of as a Steam Deck fan is using the XG Mobile with that thing, with SteamOS 3.8. Now that sounds pretty freaking cool. Like, that creates an actual desktop PC using SteamOS. Like, I had the 4090 XG Mobile for about 3 months, and it was a similar situation to the difference between the ROG Ally and the Steam Deck, where when it would work, it was incredible. Like, I was pulling 120 FPS in Diablo 4 maxed out at 4K, and then I would play other games that should have no problem utilizing the 4090 in that card, and they would shit the bed, like Starfield, for example, or Remnant 2 was the other one. So it was a weird experience, but if I could use it with SteamOS, that would be awesome. I see some comments saying that they want that for the Steam Deck, but like, they can't do it because of the USB-C port on the Steam Deck. It's not Thunderbolt enough to actually use an eGPU. But for the Steam Deck too, Valve, if you're looking for ideas, you should definitely allow people to use an eGPU, because if you're building this thing out to be a desktop operating system to be used in tandem or replace Windows, I mean, getting better graphics performance out of a handheld just sounds like another win that you can put in your hat, another feather you can put in your hat, your cowboy hat, your Stetson. I was assuming we were months away from the finished version of SteamOS, but like, after seeing how well it runs on the ROG Ally, even with the problems I went through and the controller problems and everything, you know, the issues that I always have with this stuff, I think it's got to be pretty soon that it's coming out, because it's working. It's really cool that it doesn't use the Armory crate button down here. It uses the Xbox button because it thinks it's a Xbox Elite controller plugged into it. Really cool potential here. Not quite there yet. If this is your only gaming handheld device, I would definitely not install SteamOS. I would just install a partition of Bazite, because it is SteamOS. It's just got more features that I don't understand. But yeah, I would go with that over something like this, because a lot of the problems I had, I think, were caused by SteamOS being in like beta and not totally ready. But it's installable if you want to do it. But yeah, that brings me to the second news story of this video. I was curious why Valve put so much effort into Steam families over the last year. And now that I've seen what Nintendo is doing with digital games, it's got to be because they caught wind of that and they see the winds changing in terms of how developers look at sharing digital games. It is really funny though that what Nintendo is doing is exactly what they talked about doing with the Xbox One before they had to rebuild the entire operating system about 6 months before it came out. And now everyone's praising it because it's Nintendo. But what they're doing is they're basically turning your games into digital physical games. So like they're called physical game cards. It's like a little folder management system where instead of being called downloadable games, they're going to convert the little graphic into a Switch card. And then you can put them in a little desk drawer. They don't all have to be installed. It'll show all your digital games. And the cool thing is you can not only install them across 2 devices at the same time, but you can also share them with your friends. So if you're near your friend's Nintendo Switch, they can hold their Switch up. You can lend the game to them. I'm assuming you won't be able to play it. And then for 14 days, they'll have access to that game. And that's really cool. I think Valve should figure out some way to implement a feature like that, where it's just like a one button push, simple process to lend your games to other people that you've bought on Steam, because that's the best marketing tool ever. This happened to me so much when I was a kid, like with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, that was my favorite game. I had an Xbox. That was the game I played the most when the first year of the Xbox was happening. And then my buddy George Cobain came over and was like, yo, I got Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. And I was like, they made more of them because the internet wasn't around back then, or we didn't have it. So I played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. He lent it to me for a couple of days. And then when I gave it back, I went and begged my dad to go buy me Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. Now that I'm an adult, I mean, I've gone over to my friend's house and they've had games on their PlayStation 5 that I was interested in that I wasn't really like about to buy. And then after seeing them be played, I was like, hell, I want to buy that game now. So having Steam be able to like transfer your games for 14 days or so to your friends, especially with the Steam Deck where you could beam it across devices just like the Nintendo Switch, that could be a really cool evolution of Steam families to take into the future. The whole situation around the Nintendo Switch 2 just feels a little weird to me, if I'm being honest. Like everyone seems excited, but like no one seems hyped for it. It seems like something like an iPhone update where everyone's gonna get it, but like no one's really talking about it. And I think that comes down to the fact that Nintendo hasn't shown off a lot of games. But just thinking back to 2017, the excitement that I had back then, knowing that that thing came out on my birthday, March 3rd in 2017, I was over the moon excited because not only the Nintendo first party games, but I was excited for third party games from the Xbox 360 and PS3 generation being ported over. And then the Steam Deck just came in and ate that aspect of the Nintendo Switch's lunch. Like I have not bought a third party game on the Switch for over 3 years now, because not only do they run better on the Steam Deck, but if I buy these games on Steam instead of the Switch, I get the added benefit that I can also play them on my main PC and the saves will transfer back and forth. And because the Nintendo Switch is the only console, all those games are just going to be locked down there forever and they don't use cross save or anything like that. So that is a huge barrier of entry to me for third-party games. I mean, I really want to play Metroid Prime 4. I love Metroid, all versions of it. So I probably will buy a Switch 2 just to play that game and go back to some I missed, like Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Like I haven't played a Switch game since Tears of the Kingdom came out. I like buy them, I put them on a shelf, and then I'm like, when the Switch 2 is out and it can actually run these games acceptably, that's when I'll go back and play them. But it's just crazy that there's this argument for a ton of people that the Nintendo Switch was not meant to be replaced by the Steam Deck. Like they're not really competitive. But for me, I don't know if it's because I'm older or I just have different tastes than everyone else. It basically has replaced the Nintendo Switch. I got an OLED for PS Ready back when it came out, and I played Mario Wonder on it, and that's really it. I think that's the only game I've played on my Nintendo Switch OLED, because as much as I like Nintendo first party games, on one hand, I think I outgrew them. And on the other, I just have so many Steam games that I can play in my backlog on the Steam Deck at any given time. I just don't have the time to be juggling 2 handhelds at once. Like I had to dig the ROG Ally out of a desk drawer and it was covered in dust. Like I had to dust that fucker off before I made this video. So yeah, I think it's just down to the fact that I'm a little bit older and I don't have a ton of time to play games anymore. But I have like no excitement for the Switch 2 outside of going back in my backlog and playing a few games that I missed over the past couple of years. Like, it is nowhere near the excitement I had back when the Nintendo Switch 1 came out, and that is just 100% thanks to the Steam Deck and just the progress Valve has made with Steam as a whole. Like, it feels like a really competitive, cool platform now, and the hard work has been noticed. But yeah, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. I'm not the hardcore tech user that everyone else is. I figured there's plenty of other videos out there, so I figured I'd give you the perspective from someone who wants to just punch a hole in the wall the second something goes wrong with computer stuff. So this was just a nightmare for me all day. I really hope you appreciate my effort because, you know, there's a lot more fun things I could have been doing on a Thursday night. Like, I got to edit this video now, and I'm just like so mad that that was such a process, because in the Deck Wizard video, everything worked. This dude is flying through it, just mastering everything. I'm doing everything exactly the same as him, and then it's trying to activate BitLocker, and I'm like, what the fuck is BitLocker, dude? I've never even heard of that. So yeah, that brings me to the end of the video. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.